and this is our big one. So what I'm going to tell you right now is that if you're going to make any of the stuff that I'm talking to you about today, where at some point in time you're going to have to convert to a disc drill or a disc seeder or a disc planter. The reason for that is because it cuts through. When we have the shanks and the tines, you kind of come through and you end up dragging a lot of the plants along. It's sort of like a hair comb thing, and we don't really want that. We want to cut in and drill these things directly in. And I'll give you an example. In Ontario right now, I'm working with a farmer named Bill Callahan, and we're going to seed we seeded a whole bunch of lentils last year, and then we seeded the corn directly into the lentils. They were alive, we just seeded it right in. Corn grew fine, the lentils stayed on the ground, but we couldn't have done it if we hadn't had a disc drill, so that we could just seed right through all the lentils and just plant the corn right in there. Now, why would I do that? Because the lentils form a mycorrhizal association with corn, and we had no mineral nutrient deficiencies in the corn. We did where we didn't have the lentils. So that's the kind of thing that I'm going to talk to you about, because it's the way that we can make, not using herbicides, competing with the weeds, not having to use many chemicals. And in fact, as an organic farmer, you should be away from using anything when we do this right. Next. We're going to take advantage of the mycorrhiza. Now, some of you are going to be using phosphorus, rock phosphorus. Rock phosphorus is great because it takes a long time to come down, but we still need to actually make sure that phosphorus gets into the plant. That would be the same from if we're using manure. So if we're going to do that, we're going to have to take advantage of the mycorrhiza. If we're going to leave everything on the surface, we need the mycorrhiza too, because the mycorrhiza actually will go in there, drag the nutrients out of what's decomposing, and put it directly into the plant. It's like a pipeline straight in there, and that's what we're going for. And these are how rotations actually affect things. Wheat's not horribly mycorrhizal, and in organic rotations, we definitely want to take advantage of using the mycorrhiza. And we need, what you can see here in this graph is that flax really loved the organic rotations, and part of that was because I had clovers in them. So flax and clover, flax and lentils, flax loves those kinds of things. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to take advantage of next. If you're growing potatoes, mulch potatoes, living mulches, you can call cover crops whatever you like. I actually don't like the term cover crops because it implies that we have to grow a crop. And I don't care if you grow it 3 inches high. I mean, that's fine. 5 centimeters, 6 centimeters, whatever you want. You don't have to grow it to seed. Not at all. Just grow it to keep the ground covered. Grow a mulch in potatoes. Now, this experiment was done in Switzerland, and what we found was that when we grew the mulch, the potatoes at first didn't look very good, but we didn't have a lot of soil on them because we weren't getting the splash and all the other things. In the end, we actually yielded about 1 potato more per plant, and we didn't have nearly the disease issues, and we didn't spray anything. Because my whole goal here is to have what I call recovering conventional farmers, getting away from using sprays and things like that. And the way to do that is to show them how to mulch, grow living covers, which are like living mulches and things like that. And that's what we're going for, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about next. One of the things we did in Lethbridge very successfully, and we're doing in the Pellucid now too, is we grew sweet clover. We underseeded our wheat with sweet clover. And we underseeded the wheat with sweet clover. We harvested the wheat, and then we let the sweet clover grow up instead of a fallow. We did not plow the sweet clover down. We just laid it down. You can use a forage chopper. You can mow it. You can crimp it, whatever you like. You just need to knock it down at full flower. When you do that, okay, when you knock it down at full flower, leave it on the ground, it actually has this amazing herbicidal property. We didn't have any weeds. I had hoorays come out to me and come into the plant. They actually said, well, can I have a map? And sure, and then they took a tape measure because they didn't believe that I didn't have weeds in my organic plots. It made it work. Now, when we were experimenting, we had the same phase of every rotation every year. It was a problem. We built up sweet clover people, and I couldn't eat sweet clover anymore. It just was gone. It was the best thing that ever happened to me because it made me go and look for other things. If it hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't have looked for other things, and I wouldn't know about subterranean clover. I wouldn't know about all the brassicas that we're working with now. I wouldn't know about using lentils and some other things that we were talking about. So sometimes disaster, it's all about learning from disaster. Next. This is what it looked like 3 weeks after we mowed it. So you can see my residues were disappearing very quickly. So it's not like I had piles of sweet clover down there. I didn't. Next. This is cereal rye in corn. You can see where one side is chopped and the other side is standing. There's no difference. In fact, we liked it standing better. So again, that's that discerning where we're just seeing straight through. Next. Now let's have a look. This is mycorrhiza, and the higher number, the better microbial community, the mycorrhiza. And you can see that where we put the corn seeded directly into the rye, we had far more mycorrhiza. And that means we can cut down on phosphorus, which in this case we weren't using anyways, but it just meant that we knew the plants were getting more of what they needed. The other thing that was really important is that we're seeing that when we get the mycorrhiza up, that we get the boron up. And for those of you who have tried corn at any time, or even your wheat, boron is really important for filling the head. And so anytime you're filling the seed head, you need to make sure your boron's up. So this is another way of just making sure with the mycorrhiza that you're going to get the boron that you need out of the system. Next. Chickpeas. You folks grow desies. I underseeded my wheat this year with desies. So what we did is we set the 80 line and we seeded the desies in the chickpeas. Well, actually, these are Billy beans. They're just little small kahooties. I couldn't get desies, but I know where to get them now because I talked to a bunch of people here and they said, oh yeah, no problem, we can get you some. I want to use the desies because desies are more wild type. They take up a lot more phosphorus. They're highly mycorrhizal. I needed something that laid on the ground. These chickpeas stayed on the ground. The wheat grew up. We had tough yields this year in the Palouse, 40 bushel wheat on dry land. This is DNS wheat, our northern spring. And I did 40 bushels where the average in our area was 34 with underseeded with chickpeas. So we seeded the chickpeas, then we offset by half our AB line and then seeded in between the rows. So that's how we did this. We had to do 2 passes. If I could set up the drill differently, I would. Row spacing in this case, we're on 12-inch spacing, so we're currently offset it by 6, and so every 6 inches I had a row of something. The good news is that I took none of the chickpeas in the wheat, well, the odd one here and there, and then I harvested the chickpeas afterwards. So I got an excellent yield at full protein of my wheat, and I got a really nice yield of chickpeas as well. And so I doubled up on my crops. Fabulous. And the other thing is that this was all about showing recovering conventional farmers that you don't need to use herbicide, and I never used a herbicide. In that area, wheat. Winter wheat, spring wheat, So the whole point about it was to actually try and get something else into this area. And then the other reason, okay, so people ask me, well, why the chickpeas? Many of you are the same way. You are on very well buffered soils. And it's hard to get the phosphorus out of them. It's hard to get sulfur out of them because of the calcium. Well, chickpeas naturally produce a lot of oxalic acid. So any of you who have grown chickpeas, you know that your cans at the end of the year, if you're walking chickpea fields, they actually have a line about here that has holes in your cans from all the oxalic acid that is eating away your cotton pants. If you touch chest when they feel cold, and actually if you wear shorts in them, and I had a grad student that determined this for us. She wore shorts the whole day while we were assessing chickpea field and had great big blisters on her legs where she'd been walking through the chickpeas from the oxalic acid. Wonderful. This is subterranean clover. Another one where we see we just leave it in. We don't worry about, in this case, it's wonderful because subterranean clover is the gift that keeps on giving. Because all the seeds they're like peanuts. They go up and then the seed head goes down and develops the seeds in the ground. That's why it's all called subterranean clover. And then you always have all this hard seed in there. But it only grows an inch high, and it just is a mat that covers the soil. Gosh, you can tell I'm Americanized. I keep saying inches. Sorry.
Thank you.
And anyways, and it's just wonderful. We get this dense mat, we outcompete the weed, and we get the nitrogen, and we get all the benefits from it. So it's one of those things, it's fabulous. And so now we're just growing the corn directly in there. We just seed right into it. We don't care, and we're controlling weeds, and we're not spraying, and it's wonderful. Next.